For the year 2020, I'm making a video review for every new movie I watch, whether in theaters or at home, and on July 12th, I watched How to Build a Girl. Welcome to my year in movies. This is Talking to Myself. Joanna Morgan is a 16-year-old living in a cramped house in a poor area of Wolverhampton. By all estimations, her life is a dead end, but that does not stop her from dreaming about becoming a writer. And she's a good, prolific writer, bordering on effusive to the chagrin of her teachers. But she takes those writing capabilities and she decides to become a rock critic who has never listened to rock music. After she gets on board to this magazine and she gets the opportunity to interview a musician in Dublin, her glowing, bubbling review and interview come across as a diary entry rather than a serious journalistic piece. And in an attempt to come across as a serious writer, she decides to become a mean, hateful critic. As her writing persona and her real life begin to blur, it causes problems with her family, her colleagues, and that cute musician boy from Dublin. So, I hated this. I shouldn't have. The poster was charming. The concept was cool. I'm all for stories of a girl redefining who she is and getting into trouble with rock musicians. That's totally my thing, honestly. But I hated this. I said that out loud to an empty apartment several times during the runtime of the film. I do want to address some of the positives. Paddy Considine, who plays Joanna's father, he's really fun. He plays like a failed rocker, which is exactly my type. And he's fantastic in the Blood and Quartet trilogy, so I was super stoked to see him in this as well. And the film actually integrates the dreamlike elements really well, and they have tons of imagined sequences and dreams, and she has a very vivid and active imagination that influences things that she sees around her. Like, she has tons of pictures on her wall that she talks to, and I liked that. That was handled really well. And those dreamlike qualities paired with kitschy circumstances, meet cutes, everything's a little too safe. This film is a Disney Channel original movie masquerading as an art house film. And when you make an R-rated Disney Channel original movie, you don't make a good, consistent movie. Let's talk about why. The film has too many messages that it wants to convey. It wants to send stories of, like, you know, achieving your dreams no matter what. It wants to send messages of, like, not being a mean-spirited, hateful person, which fine is a good message. They also have messages of, you know, it's okay to reinvent yourself, it's okay to do things for the girl, especially if that girl is you. Those messages don't necessarily not blend, but to have all of those woven together in the same movie, and to have them not be conveyed through the actions or dialogue, but through the characters literally telling the audience, that's really weak writing. Those messages are not delivered in a good way, mainly because the tone of the movie is not consistent either. It has no idea what that tone wants to be. On the one hand, it wants it to be like a drama. On the other hand, it wants it to be a comedy, but because it doesn't lean heavily enough on either of those genres, it becomes very muddy at times where it should be very clear what tone it is. In order to talk about the worst tonal problems in the film, I'm going to have to spoil the end of the film. If you care about spoilers, skip ahead of this timestamp, or just skip to the end of Grayscale. 3, 2, 1, go. So on Joanna's quest to become a serious, mean journalist, she bashes everyone. She's a hateful person, and that gets her this award at her magazine called Arsehole of the Year. She wins this award and she goes to brag about it to the musician from Dublin who happens to be at the award show. When she tries to make a move on him, he's like, hey, you're 16, we don't do that, I'ma see you later. And rather than be like, huh, that sucks, but he's right, she decides to hook up with someone from work. Now bear in mind, she is the only 16-year-old in this office, but she hooks up with one of the guys from the office. Sketchy. After sleeping with him, she decides to write an invasive piece about the musician whom she interviewed earlier in the film. Now, when she interviewed him at the time, she was a very bubbly, sweet person, and he told her some very private, personal things. She takes all of that information and she writes a very invasive piece about all of that. And the guy that she sleeps with gives her front page for it. That piece goes wide, and the musician tries to call her to be like, hey, it was a mistake to talk to you. I'm sorry if I ever offended you. That was not cool. All of her conflicting emotions of feeling terrible about herself compounded with this phone call where the one person who believed in her journey as a writer finally backs out and withdraws his support. She attempts suicide. So she gets drunk and she begins to attempt suicide. The music is very dramatic and it's a very emotional moment. Her Asshole of the Year trophy falls off the shelf and knocks her unconscious. Music cuts completely out. The trophy is literally a butt on legs. It felt like it took this very serious moment and turned it into a joke. There was no one in the room for me to look to gauge. Was that uncomfortable? Because it was uncomfortable for me. And it felt weird. I didn't like it. It's like it wanted to be funny, maybe. Or maybe it didn't mean to be funny and it just failed. Oh, it was a weird tonal problem. And the whole movie is plagued by that because it doesn't take itself seriously enough, but then it also takes itself too seriously. And that is a very bad combination to find yourself in. The film is compared to Almost Famous, and that is a bad comparison, actually. On the surface, it seems like a very natural comparison. They are both teenage writers following rock groups and learning about life. It's a coming-of-age story. That's a bad comparison for two reasons. One, Almost Famous knows tonally what it wants to be. It knows what it is. The big key difference is Patrick Fugit was under the age of 18 when they made the film, and he looks it. Beanie Feldstein does not look 16. I think after Booksmart, casting directors were like, we can have her play a teenager. She's short, she has a round face, people will buy it. Now, I speak as someone who had a round face all growing up. I know exactly how it de-ages you. Just because you have a round face does not mean you pass for a 16-year-old. Beanie Feldstein is adorable. She always will be. She is not 16, and she does not convey 16. And so because she doesn't convey naive 16, what comes across is a 20-something who does not know how to behave like an adult. And it borders on unlikable. It reminded me a lot of what little I know of Lena Dunham's character on Girls, where it just comes across as very immature and very irresponsible. It was a bad choice. I think she was miscast. She did fine on the accent for what I know of a Wolverhampton accent, and she's a good actress, but she did not convey 16, and so that ended up being really distracting. And because she comes across as an irresponsible, annoying 20-something versus a charming, naive 16-year-old, we don't care about Joanna as a character. And the film doesn't spend enough time building her relationships with any other character for us to care about those relationships either. And so when those relationships are put in jeopardy by her being a straight-up asshole, we don't care. We don't get enough of any of the other characters, really, to have an opinion on them. They don't spend enough time on anyone, but the film is still too long. I was checking my phone 45 minutes in, and I was very disappointed to see that we had a whole hour to go. It was just not well-paced and not well-structured. And maybe that's because I'm trained on cliches, and so when it does something different, I don't get it. But it was not great. Not great at all. And for the love of God, I don't care if your film has imagination sequences or dream sequences. I don't care if it plays fast and loose with the laws of reality. Do not have your character address the camera at the end of the film if a precedent has not been set, because just like cats, it freaks us out. I did not like that. It made me very uncomfortable. And Beanie Feldstein's very cute. I'm totally fine looking at Beanie Feldstein. But do not pull that out of left field at the very, 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 very last second. I did not like that at all. But yeah. I did not like How to Build a Girl. I see what it wanted to be, but it didn't succeed in doing that, which is a shame. But I think, like the movie says, it can reinvent itself later. I hope that the directors and writers or whatever get to do other things. I think they have good ideas, but this was just not a good execution of those ideas, which again is a shame, but what can I say? I did not like this movie. This has been my year in movies. Thank you for watching.